So, hello everybody, and welcome to what is the first of the contact center network. So, really excited to be bringing this to everybody in the industry, and it's so good to see so many people have connected with me on LinkedIn. I've got nearly 100 people that have joined the group on LinkedIn. So if you haven't joined that, please check out the Contact Center Network group on LinkedIn, because it's a great place that I want us to start sharing and start helping people within the industry, specifically at this time, because I think it's really important. There's a lot of people in the business that are really struggling at the moment, and I've had some really challenging conversations and are going through lots of different things. So the more people we can pull together in this network and help share and just talk to people and communicate is even better. So I set this up, and I've been working with some great guys from a company called EVAD, which is Ethos, Voice and Data. And between the two of us, we've tried to help kind of shape how many people we can get into this group. And the more people that we can get, the better. So these merited numbers, which is great. And they're on the call today. So we should have Chris Melia from Ethos, Voice and Data. And then there's a few other people that are joined from Cirrus Response, a chap called Dan Lloyd, who's been really useful in helping to kind of drive some of the turnout today. So thank you very much to all those guys. And if you would like to kind of talk to them anymore, drop a note into the chat. But I'll just go through a little bit about me and a little bit of why we set up, a little bit about the agenda for today. So, opportunity for some online networking. So a lot of you have already found the chat function, and you're dropping all your comments in there now, which is great. Please feel free to do that as we go through the session, and you will get a copy of the chat afterwards. We've got three awesome speakers. So we've got Lee Houghton, give us a wave, Lee. And then we've got Mike Smith from Three Wise Monkeys, give us a wave, Mike.
How we doing?
And then we've got Martin Teasdale down wherever he is on your screen, so he's giving us a wave. And they've got around 15 minutes for a bit of a knowledge share today. So they've all got kind of different topics, different insights and different backgrounds that are really, really useful. And I think really relevant for some of the challenges that we're going through at the moment as a contact center community. So hopefully you will get some real good value from that. Then there's, I'm going to be talking about the next events that are coming on. So hopefully if this is a success and you all like it and it's a value, we'll do more of these on a regular basis. I've got another one that's coming down the line very, very soon. But first of all, why have I kind of set this up? So I've been chatting to lots of people in the contact center community. I spent a good 16, 17 years in the contact center industry. And loads of people have been talking about the challenges that they've had in creating quick remote online services and trying to pull the teams together in a remote capacity and thinking about how they go about planning for what's coming down the line. And I thought, what better way than to kind of set up something that can bring together an online community that doesn't cost anything, that just costs an investment in your time, that hopefully can add value to the network. I've been building up my network of contact center professionals for a while now, and for me it's great to have a team of like-minded people that know and kind of experience the same challenges that I've had and that I know a lot of people are going through. So I thought, why not create this? And working with the likes of EVAD and Cirrus, it's been really good to open up that network. And what I did as a business, I set up around 14 months ago. And my aim and my purpose is to try and partner with contact center providers to optimize their customer experience, which sounds very high and blue sky, but I firmly believe that if you focus on the people, process and technology within your business, you will undoubtedly drive a great customer experience. And it's great to see so many people from so many different industries here to be able to kind of help bring some of that to life. And the organization that I'm partnered with, EVAD and Cirrus, are great because they've got some awesome platforms that help bring some of that technology part to life and help bring that end-to-end customer experience together to provide really great customer experiences, both at an omni-channel level and just a normal voice level. So really great to be partnering with Chris and the team and Dan Lloyd to help bring some of that end-to-end solution together. So I'm not going to bang on about me or anybody else, because it's not about selling here. It's about bringing people together and sharing some of the experience that comes from having a group together like this. So the first thing I want to do is introduce the awesome Lee Houghton and say thank you very much for joining us today, Lee. The floor is yours. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to let you introduce yourself and share your screen with all the awesome topics that you've got on the screen.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Gary. Much appreciated. But I think first, just before I do start, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to talk today. A few people know me on the call. A few people probably don't know me on the call. And those that do know that I really struggle to keep within time limits. So I know you said 15 minutes and my fingers are crossed. I have gone through my presentation a few times before reading it out and going through it today. And I can tell you at least once it's been within the 15 minutes. So I'm hoping that the rest of it is, this is going to happen as well. So what you can see there is 5 agenda points I'm going to cover, and hopefully they mean absolutely nothing to you. So 1 C and 3 lessons, 4 C's that enable engagement, 4 C's in the pub, 4 C's in you, and a bit of a recap. Hopefully they mean nothing to you now, but in 15 minutes time or 14 and a half minutes time, fingers crossed that they will mean something to you. I thought it quite relevant though to start with a story, because I'm conscious that a large number of people don't know who I am, why I do what I do. So I just want to take you back. I was 14 years old. I closed my parents' front door and I walked to the end of the short drive. I look left towards the top of the road and I see one of my neighbours walking towards me. I wave. We start talking. We haven't spoken in a few months. We chat about what we've been up to. We laugh, we smile, and as we recall our stories. What was interesting though about that conversation is we both commented that you couldn't tell that we hadn't spoken to each other in months. And how good is that? I mean, how good is it to have such a period away and not feel like you've spent that period away from somebody? So me and Chris, we lived 4 houses apart since the age of 1. That's us there on the screen. I'm the one with the glasses on. And we lived 4 houses apart since the age of 1. And even though we went to separate schools, we had different interests, we dressed differently, we had different tastes in music, we'd always found comfort in spending time together. And when I was 26, Chris had moved into his first house with his young family, and he arranged for a Wednesday night get-together for a group of us. And I think it's safe to say it's an eclectic group of fellas. I think there's somebody there for everybody. Different occupations we've got different backgrounds, we've got different interests, joining together once a week to stay connected, to laugh, to share our stories, and also be there for each other. And it was on one of those Wednesday nights when, not long after I started me role in a business improvement gig. And I remember I sat down at the table, I just brought the round of drinks, and we were talking about my new job, and Chris jokingly said, he went, "Who do you think you are? Going into where people work and telling them how they can do their job better. If you come to see me, I'd tell you to F off." And then we laughed. And then about 2 years ago, whilst I was on a client site in London, I received the call that I've been dreading. The call to say that my best friend of 39 years had taken a turn for the worst and that I should come home. The journey back is a blur. I get on the first train, I dash to a waiting taxi, and I head to the hospice where he's there. And I see him frailer and paler than when he was just 3 days earlier. He slowly opens his arms, we hug, and I set myself up to stay the night with him. At 7:50 in the morning, breakfast is at 8 o'clock, so I remove myself from the couch and I sit up and I look over to him and I go, "Chris, I'll be back in 2 minutes. I'm just going to go for a wash before breakfast." And on leaving the bathroom, I look over to him. He breathes in, his chest expands, and that's it. The person I'd grown up with, the person who was my best man, my oldest friend, and godfather to my daughter, my youngest child, he'd gone. Chris is gone. He'd suffered so much, but he really showed it. He was 39, and this was his 3rd bout of cancer. A week passes, and I'm still asking, why the bloody hell did it happen? Why Chris? He's the most selfless person I know. Yet he's left without achieving what he could have achieved. And this forces me to really look hard at my life. I don't have my own business. I'm not doing what I want to do. I've started a lot of things, but I've not seen many of them through. I'm a serial starter and never completer. What have I really got to show for my life outside of my family? What an absolute waste is what I was thinking to myself. If I went now, would my kids be really proud of what I've achieved? Would they really? I sit down and think back to Chris's chest taking that last intake of breath and reflect on the lessons that he'd shared with me. And this was a life-changing moment for me, and I needed to act now. Because in the months leading up to Chris's passing, he'd offered me money to set up my own consultancy, but I didn't want that. I didn't want anything from him. I just wanted him. However, what I'd seen his perspective on life change completely. The little things no longer mattered to him. So when he was told he was terminal and they couldn't do any more, give him any more treatment, his perspective changed on life, and the little things didn't bother him like they used to. So I asked him if he'd consider sharing with me what he believes the 3 most important life lessons are through his eyes now, when he's got a time limit and he reflects back over his life. Over the coming weeks, we chatted about these things at length and the reasons why these were important to him. And 3 final lessons that he landed on were: always be yourself, make good friends, and time is limited. These were the 3 things that he deemed most important to share. And he had his own personal reasons to choose these 3, which I'm not going to share today, but I will happily share at a later time. But what did they mean to me? What did they mean to everybody else? And did I really understand, despite the conversations that I'd had with him about them? And then just 4 months later, I was fortunate enough to support an amazing training session with the man with the biggest ever smile. And his smile was so big that when he smiled, his eyes closed. He's truly inspirational, and he really motivates people to make the impossible inevitable. He talks about self-talk and that voice in your head. And on the 4-hour drive home from that session that day through the picturesque hills of Wales, it hit me. I now understood what it mean, what them 3 things meant to me, and what they could mean to others, and the sheer importance. And I think back to starting my change career 15 years ago, and on my first day, I walked into a room to be greeted by faces I didn't recognise, people who didn't work in the same organisations, consultants, smartly dressed, well-spoken, and really clever. How would I fit in here? I mean, I DJ'd 2 nights a week, and I still lived at home with my mum and dad. I'm not good enough to do this. That's what I thought. And then a few years later, I was working on a project, living away from home 4 days a week, still working with consultants. And one afternoon, the lead consultant came up to me and he said, "Have you got 5 minutes, Lee? I could do with a chat." So we walked down a corridor and we walked into a room, and he went, "Lee, you've got real potential. But if you want to be a consultant, you've really got to smarten your act. I mean, look at how you're dressed, your shoes, you're in jeans, and you're wearing a jumper. A jumper." In that moment, I'm gutted, deflated, and questioning whether I could actually be what I wanted to be and do what I wanted to do. However, as I sit here now on my couch with yourselves, I have achieved it. I have got my own business. I am doing what I want to do, but I've done it my way, and I've done it through always being myself, and that's what it means to me. A few days ago, my 4-year-old came into the room and she went, "Daddy, you're my best friend," and give me a friendship bracelet. And I was on a call and somebody said, "Am I supporting the NHS?" I said, "No, it's off my daughter," and it's what she gave me. 2 years ago, I would have said, "Yes, I am supporting the NHS," because I would have been embarrassed and worried about what people would have said. But no, not now, because I'm trying to always be myself, and I think I now know what that means. I believe. And I've thought about all of the challenges that I face working with people to influence change in a whole host of different organisations. And there's been different challenges of different sizes at different times. But one that stays with me is when I started in the change role, I was sheep dipped in some training. And I left feeling really excited and bought into what it was all about, believing that a performance board, you know them things, a whiteboard on wheels with some numbers on, would change everybody's life. And it would solve all of their problems. So I grabbed the nearest whiteboard and I wheeled it to the team I was working with, and all I could see was blank faces, confusion and resistance when I would tell them what this board could do for them. why could everybody not see what I could? Is it me? Is it my approach? And then a few years later, I was fortunate to be leading a project, and the solution, it had already been developed, and it needed people to move desks. I gave them this news like really excitedly and telling them how this change was for the better, but they weren't as excited as me. It felt like I was evicting them from their home. Some people who I was telling and talking to had sat in those seats for a good number of years. They didn't seem to trust me. They didn't believe what I was saying, but why would they? And then thinking back to what Chris said in that pub on that Wednesday night, who do you think you are going into where people work and telling them that how to do their job better? If you came to see me, I'd tell you to F off. That was from my best friend, the person that I'd grown up with since I was one, the person that I trusted the most. He'd given me a huge insight that day, and I hadn't seen it when he first said it. So the key to successful change is the people. You can have the best solution, but if the people don't believe in it, or you tell them what to do, it's an uphill battle, and it can be really lonely in that role. However, if you be yourself, if you talk with them, involve them, and build trust with them, just like you would your friends, solving it together, you can do it. And so you might have heard parts of my story before, you might not, but seeing Chris take that last breath and his chest rising like it did was a catalyst for me creating my business that helps people who are leading change to increase their confidence and influence to be able to transform organizations with coaching, my podcast, but more importantly, Chris's 3 lessons. And that's those 3 lessons I want to talk to you about, and I've introduced those 3. But what I also want to talk to you about is the 4 C's that enable engagement. And if we're talking about people, then it's engagement. And if people are the key to success and successful change, then you need to engage those people first and foremost. So I've got 4 C's that I want to go through with you: connect, converse, collaborate, and celebrate. And connect is how well do you connect with your people on the reason you do what you do and the direction that you're wanting to go today and in the future. How often do you talk about the vital things that help you or prevent you from moving forward? And I don't mean talk with your peers, with seniors. I mean your teams. How often do you talk with your teams about those things? How often do you collaborate on the key opportunities for people and process with your teams? And how often do you celebrate the successes and actually reflect to understand what has happened and what could happen? So those are the 4 C's: connect, converse, collaborate, and celebrate. So I'd like you just to reflect now, really, and go, before we were in this situation, how well did you reflect? How well did you connect, converse, collaborate, and celebrate? And then in this situation that we find ourselves now, has the way that you do those 4 things different? And what are you going to do when you go to the new world, whenever we're allowed out of our houses again? So that's those 4 C's. And then thinking back to the pub, this is what Chris did when I was 26. We connected every single Wednesday night, 8 o'clock in the Hayrick in Leyland. It was 8 o'clock. We talked about what we did last week, what we did yesterday, what we've done today. We collaborated. So like I said, the picture I showed you is we're an eclectic bunch of lads, different experiences, different everything. But the one thing we could collaborate on was that pub quiz that night. Irrelevant of our backgrounds, irrelevant of everything else, we could collaborate on that pub quiz. And then with whether we won, whether we lost, we would celebrate together. So that's how we did it there. And then in an organization and in a business, then how well do you connect on your purpose and your vision? Do you have daily meetings, weekly meetings, or not? And is the purpose of them to connect your team, or are you doing them because you're told to do them? Do you talk about the things that can help move you forward, measures, standards, and all of those things that are the visual management, skills, capacity? Do you collaborate together? So as a leader, do you go and spend time with your people, coaching them on the process? Do you problem solve together as a team? And do you celebrate and reflect together on what went well and what didn't necessarily go well? All of these things here that's on this slide, they are elements that are often referred to and delivered independently, but this should be part of an interconnected system to engage your people, to encourage the right habits and behaviors to move forward together. So I just want to just recap really quickly. I'd love you to reflect just on Chris's 3 lessons just for yourself and really consider, are you always yourself? Are you the same person at work that you are at home, and are you yourself? How well do you make good friends? And that could be customers, clients, peers, colleagues, team members, staff, or however, people. How well do you build relationships with people? Ultimately is what that one means. And then, do you talk about starting that diet on Monday, doing something at New Year? Or time is limited, so can you act now rather than wait until Monday, rather than wait until the start of the week, rather than wait until the start of the month? And then the 4 C's. In the previous world, 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, how well did you connect, converse, collaborate, and celebrate? How has that changed? And can you reflect and think about some of those ways, and maybe what you're doing now that you need to take into the new world? But are they all connected, those 4 things together? Is it a full system, or are they all independent things? And then lastly, if you want to make another friend, then that's my details down at the bottom if you want to chat a little bit more about any of those things. So I'd just like to thank you for your ears, really, for the last, I don't know how many minutes it was. How many minutes was that, Gary?
You were 15 minutes, 21 seconds, Lee. Well done.
Very good. There you go. So,
well done.
Yeah, cheers.
Thanks very much for that, Lee. I think there's a really interesting point that you've made there, and I think for me, it made me think about a great quote that comes from Mark Twain, and it's continuous improvement is better than delayed perfection. And actually, I think so many people put things off and wait for it to be perfect before actually doing it, rather than thinking about how you get that kind of incremental growth from doing lots of different small things. If anybody's got any particular questions, we had one from Jay Morris, question Lee, which was, Lee, how can we keep to 3 priorities when we're so busy?
Which are the most important? So I would just say there, because I've had to-do lists of 12 things on, to-do lists of 23 things on, and to-do lists that have outgrown. I think really it's about really understanding where you're trying to get to. So if we think back to this slide and the purpose and the vision of where you're trying to get to, and what are the 3 things that are going to help you get the most important to help move you forward on those 3 things. And what your 3 things might be different to your boss's 3 things, that might be different to your people's 3 things. So it's about understanding, I think, as well, and agreeing what those 3 priorities are. So I think understand where you want to get to, but then collaborate and understand together what we collectively believe those 3 things, I think.
Great question from Alex Pearl, which was, do you find that you get pushback from leaders when asking them to communicate information that they historically don't?
Yes. So I think that that I've got a genuine belief, right, that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, everybody tried to improve targets, the cost and the things that used to improve. And then everybody then moved into customer experience. And then 2 years ago, people moved into employee engagement. But one thing that people haven't really tackled is leadership behaviors. And what I think that leaders have got to really reflect and look in the mirror first, because they've created the environment that everybody works in. And so to answer your question, you need to find a way to help them hold the mirror up to see why they are not happy to talk about those things. What is it that's preventing them? Because they've created the environment ultimately. And they've been successful to get to that position doing what they've done. But then I think to make the next leap, you might have to try something new. Leadership, I think, is a tough thing to do, but it's also a tough challenge to influence, because what they've been successful to do what they've done to get to that position. So you've got to unpick some of that and demonstrate how you can get to a better world.
And I think there's a really good question that's come from Warren that links onto that, Lee, which is, what do you think will be the greatest challenge will be once we enter the new normal, when everyone returns to the business or organisation?
The greatest challenge when we get to the new normal, accepting that for the last 6, 7, 8 weeks, we've been in a place where we've reflected, and I think we've connected. We've made better. We're better communicators in some ways. We're reconnecting with people that we might not have connected with previously. We've made loads of new connections. The biggest challenge is not slipping back to the way we were, because the way we were wasn't necessarily moving us forward. I think it's about doing the things that are working now and in the future to get there, not going back to the way we were. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge, is just not reverting back.
And you know what, I know Warren well, and I've had a similar conversation with Warren about what lessons do you take from this environment and what can you do differently moving forward from it that's actually going to move your business forward, and what's going to kind of make your boat go faster, if you like, to quote the old sporting analogy, which is awesome. Thank you very much. If anybody's got any other questions for Lee, please do drop them into the chat, and what I can do is I can make sure he answers them afterwards. But to keep the pace and to keep things moving forward, I'm going to swiftly hand over to the awesome Mike Smith from Three Wise Monkeys. And Mike, you have the floor. Take it away. If you've got any questions as we go through, guys, please do remember, drop them into the chat, and I'll pull them out as we go through.
Okay, hopefully everyone can see that screen, Gary.
Sure can.
Okay, good stuff. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for that, Lee. There's a few people on here who know me that know I'm pretty unemotional, sort of numbers guy, but you did get me there, Lee, so fair play to you. Normally I only get emotional about food. So we're going to use some of Lee's techniques there. We're definitely going to collaborate, and we're definitely going to have a conversation here. I'll give you a little bit of background about me, and then we'll just run this almost as a sort of workshop style. Think about the chat function, like those things you get in conferences where you can type questions that come up on the screen, and think about Gary, like the comms team that run around the conference with a microphone, and we'll pull people out for questions and examples from their day-to-day businesses. So myself, first of all, so I fell into contact centers probably like most people, pretty accidentally. Came in at agent level, and if there's a job in a contact center, I've probably had a go at it, some better than others. And these days I earn my living as a contact center consultant, running Three Wise Monkeys, looking at tech, data, and helping contact centers all across the piece, end to end, really. We're going to talk about resource planning here. So I know on the call we've got Adrian, who I know from Select Planning, I think Adrian, and I think we've got Doug. I'm not a career planner. I came into it almost as a sort of accidentally, but it's a subject that fascinates me, and hopefully we'll sort of bring it to life for you guys as well. So I guess at the moment there's a lot happening with COVID, and there's a lot of unknowns. I'm just going to pull out a few different themes and run these as conversation pieces. So we'll talk about what's happening from an employee point of view, from a call capacity point of view, and also geographically. So let's go here first of all. So call volume. So I guess my question to the group is, what's happened to call volume, and what do you believe will happen to call volumes post-COVID? I've got some clients whose call volume's actually grown, some who's dropped off a cliff, some who's gone up and then down. Be really interested to hear
Phil
from
Rowley, 40% down, but emails up 30%, interestingly.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. Excellent. Okay, keep those coming. What's happening to your handling time? So I'll give you an example. So Direct Line Group has switched off their new business line. That would be their longest handling time. So probably their handling time's dropped, but they've had to train all of their sales staff to take service calls, probably elongating it until they get competent at it. So what's happening? What do you think will happen after COVID, or as we move out of COVID? And to Phil's point of view, what deflection mechanisms have you got? What have you done with opening hours? What emails have you chucked up? Which ways have you stood up web chat? Interested in all those examples. So use the chat function. Let's see what we've got.
Lee Mogridge, Mike, we've got calls up 25% pre-lockdown. They're PPE suppliers, so no surprises there. We're now around 20% down on BAU levels, though. Interesting.
Cool. Okay. Is Gemma on there as well from LNG?
Gemma's got some comments. So, Gemma, do you want to take yourself off mute? You can share a bit with the group.
Yes, sorry, I'm here. So I've a bit of a tech issue. Yeah, we just a general conversation point, really. So yeah, we did see a real steep increase in our calls initially, as you'd expect. A lot of customers wondering what's going to be going on with their life applications. This has now levelled out. We had a struggle meeting call demands, actually, because our majority of our workforce are call centre based desktop users, so didn't have the facility to work from home. And we had to sort of shift and change our approach quite quickly and draw in resources from back office departments. So like our underwriting team and also our quality sampling team were able to jump on phones and support. We also reduced our core opening hours significantly and made sure our IVRs were all up to date. So any inbound calls, they would get the correct greeting and opening hours. Then we used some of our sort of more geekier colleagues to use them to get our colleagues up and running with some tech at home. And we use DHL to ship laptops and bits and bobs all over the country to our colleagues. And we've got about 80% of our front line now enabled and working from home. So yeah, we've had a real big shift in the way we work, and I wonder if in future will we even need to go back to how we were, now that we're proving that we can actually work well at home. Our volume, our service is back up to almost 80% now. So yeah, just food for thought, really, isn't it? And like the world we're in has changed completely. So will we see a move away from more remote working, more flexible hours, and maybe opening longer to support the customer demand rather than like the traditional 9 to 5? That sort of things come into my mind, really.
Cool, fantastic. Thanks for that, Gemma.
No worries.
I think it's an interesting story at L&G, how you've gone from sort of almost 20% of staff enabled to work to 80% in 4 to 6 weeks. So I'd encourage anyone who's interested in that just to reach out to Gemma. It's an interesting journey that a lot of contact centres will be on. Do we have a few other examples there, Gary, as well, from people?
So we had so there's an interesting one, actually. Liam Scott, do you want to take yourself off mute for a second? Liam says 65% down on calls, but expecting a big increase post-COVID compared to pre-COVID calls. So just be good to explore that a little bit, Liam, to see how you've managed that from a resourcing perspective, and any hints or tips that you need from the group. You there, Liam? There we go. Liam, you've got the floor. I'll ask for you, Liam. Mike, in terms of thinking about that, in terms of pre-COVID and post-COVID, what tips or advice have you got people to think about how to manage that big swing? Because 65% down on calls, that means those calls are probably coming down at some point. So what's the suggestion there, matey?
So I guess it's about how many people you've got and how many people you can stand up quickly. So if you've got a load of staff on furlough, then we can unfurlough those reasonably quickly. There'll be a bit of retraining, and then if your call goes back above the people you got, then you've got to work out quickly how you're going to get to recruitment, which we will talk about in a minute. If you're way understaffed and let staff go, then I think then there's a delicate balance of almost need to recruiting and training now almost. But that will put cost into the business.
And I think Alex Pearl, if you want to take yourself off mute, matey, I think you've got a few examples from some of the industries that you work with where you've seen some really interesting swings.
Yes, hello.
Alex.
Hello. So yes, I spoke to a travel sales expert at Sykes Cottages. He would deal with gaining new customers. Obviously, no one's travelling. You can't book any cottages. So it was pleasing to see that the actual company redeployed him into the customer service team. Instead of furloughing him, they redeployed him in the customer service team because they saw a huge spike of existing customer inbound queries. And I've got a friend that's a contact centre team leader at British Gas in the B2B department. Of course, as many businesses have shut shop, he's seen a 60% decrease in call volume, but he is expecting a huge spike once businesses reopen again.
Interesting. And does he know how he's going to deal with that, Alex, or is that just a sort of he's got to get his head around how he's going to deal with that spike?
Well, the company's been quite good. They haven't furloughed many of their agents, but if they are planning to do so, but are not planning on releasing any, because they know that they're going to need those agents.
Yep.
They need those numbers post-COVID.
Cool. Okay. Fantastic. That's really good, Alex. Thanks for the examples. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Gary, any more coming through on call deflection? I think there was one about an increase in email traffic.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, email traffic seems to be the big swing, and digital seems to be where it's obviously moving to rather than voice, given some of the wait time. So it's how do we think about how to manage other mediums of resource and start to plan for things like email and web chat and things like that.
Yep. Okay. Anything else on this page, Gary, or should we move on?
Let's move on.
Let's move on. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so these are two other subjects of conversation that I'm really interested in. I did chuck this up on LinkedIn, and I got royally told it was too early about 3 or 4 weeks ago, but I think we can start to have the conversation now. What's happening to attrition? The call center industry is an industry where attrition is always a perennial problem. Every call center manager is trying to keep their good people. A lot of the stuff that Lee talked about on the previous call comes into that. What's happening right now, and what do we think will happen post-COVID? Do we think that people will start moving actively in the market again? Do you think furloughed people will come back and start looking for jobs, or do we think that actually attrition will be a bit more stable than it has been traditionally? First question, looking for examples. Second example is who's still recruiting and how are they doing it? Because call center recruitment's always been usually done sort of en masse, in volume, training in rooms. Who's got some really good examples of how they're doing it right now, or how they've geared themselves up to do that post-COVID?
I think attrition's a really interesting one, isn't it, Mike? I'd be really interested if anybody's got any thoughts on attrition. Drop it into the chats about what they're forecasting or anticipating attrition to be once they come back. I.e., how many people do they think actually might leave post returning to work? Because I think people have got 6 weeks off. They're probably evaluating some of their options right now, aren't they?
They have.
Simon Poland still recruiting in Bristol, using colleagues to support with that. So cool. Simon, do you want to drop yourself off mute and have a bit of a chat about that? How you're using some of the resource to flex that up?
Yeah, can you hear me, guys?
Hi, Simon.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Brilliant. Hi, mate. So yeah, it's quite a unique one for us in Bristol. We've got 3 contact centres: Swindon, Bristol, and Ipswich. And in Bristol, it's right next to the big shopping centre. So when a lot of the stores started to close and the customer-facing colleagues started to be furloughed, we were able to flex up weekly contracts as well as home working for them colleagues to help us with our increased volume that we were getting for some of our bureau clients. We also seen a shift in how we prioritise clients in our bureau. So traditionally, we would prioritise clients for recruitment based on their volume and demand. However, with the current situation we were in, we were taking calls for facilities management for hospitals, for example, and to calls for equipment for hospitals. So we were able to flex up and overstaff them type of clients to ensure that the calls were being answered, because it would come more around, life and death, if you like, rather than customer experience. So that was quite a unique one for us.
Cool. Fantastic. Thanks for that, Simon. Nice to hear from you. I hope it's going well at Woven for you.
Thanks, mate. Good. All good.
Anyone else on the chat there, Gary, on good examples?
So I think there was one from Alex around the TL at British Gas, seen massive drop in attrition actually, and 0% absence. So it's interesting how maybe working from home is driving that different dynamic of sickness and absence, or is it a reporting challenge perhaps? I don't know.
Anyone else got any views on the absence as well? I'd be interested. I've heard that quite anecdotally quite a lot. The absence has been lower.
I'd be really interested to hear from Sonny around some of the things from an engagement perspective that employers are considering when in furlough. Is anybody doing anything different, Sonny? I know your focus is very much on the engagement in the workplace. Is anything changing?
Yeah, in fact, I've just put something on the chat as well. So just to introduce myself, I'm Sonny from Fun at Work. Normally, before COVID, we were providing equipment into contact centres to help boost engagement, improve attrition, recruitment, everything else. Obviously, our business has changed. There are still some contact centres that have the equipment, but we've flipped it a little bit now, and we're looking at how to engage people while they're working from home, and also engage their families as well, because quite often, you know, if people are working from home, we can't ignore the fact that we're actually in the home environment, and we need to be aware of people having to fit around their families, whether their partners are working for the NHS or frontline services. So I've just said, actually, we have produced a document on just some ideas to engage your teams remotely. You know, that's basically, this is new to everybody, isn't it? We're all in the same situation, and something that's good that's come out of this is everybody's trying to help each other. It's not particularly about making money at the minute. It's just about connecting and being there for each other so we can be stronger when we return.
Brilliant.
Excellent. Fantastic.
Thanks very much for that, Sonny. Mike, I'm going to move us on slightly just because conscious of time. So if we cover off our slide, and then we'll hand over to the awesome Martin. So
yeah, no worries. So on to the last slide. So I think there's a couple of subjects here really. One is about offshoring. So we heard a lot of people give examples about where they have offshored certain activities that then has really struggled to stand up in a sort of lockdown environment. So they brought stuff back onshore. And I think also home working, if we'd said to contact centres a year ago even, you're going to be fully operational from home, there'd have been all kinds of IT issues, compliance issues, PCI compliance issues, but a sort of a necessity being the mother of invention. 6 weeks, lots of contact centres have stood it up. I know Sian's on the phone. I don't know if she wanted to talk about your example from underwriting, Sian?
Yeah, so for us, we were already quite a predominantly agile area anyway, with 70% of our workers being home workers, and we were best placed to be set up ready for us to just get it up and running really quickly. So we had logistically, we had set everything up so that it was good to go, so that then as soon as the government had said that that everybody to work from home, we had it up and running within a week, which feels like when you're moving through it, it feels like it's actually quite it feels like it's maybe quite slow, but it actually just showed how engaged our staff were at that time, because everybody pulled together. It wasn't something that was forced from the top down. It was actually just everybody getting together and pushing to get ourselves up and running. And now we are 100% agile. And so because of that, we're then able to support a lot of other areas. We've been able to support at least 4 different functions within the business because we are 100% agile.
Perfect. Fantastic. Thank you for that, Sian. It's a really good example. There'll probably be a lot of people on the call who would be quite envious of getting to 100% remote capacity in 1 week.
Definitely. Yeah.
So I'll just wrap it up, Gary, and then we'll pass it on to Martin. So I guess I've got one simple wrap up, is that this situation has changed the contact center industry fundamentally to its core. My personal view is probably a little bit like Lee's takeaway. Let's not go back to bad habits. We've set up some great new innovations. We've got across a lot of barriers here. We should bank on that and push forward rather than just slip back into our old habits. Thanks, Gary. Appreciate the opportunity, and thank you guys for listening.
Thank you very much. And again, if anybody's got any other questions around anything from a resource planning perspective, we've got some great resource planners on the call as well. And we've got Mike as well, that is more than likely prepared to answer any other questions offline at the same time. You imagine, Mike? Brilliant.
Of course.
Martin, over to you to close the show.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Mike and Lee. It's been really interesting to hear these. So I'm Martin Teasdale. I'm one of the directors at a company called BPA Quality, and we do quality monitoring services for about 200 companies. We have done for the last 30 years. Like a lot of you, I came into contact centres as an agent straight after uni, loved it, and have stayed ever since. And I just wanted to share with everyone what we've been seeing from our clients and also in the wider industry QA groups that we're in around how QA has been affected by this, by the crisis, and how teams are doing it well, not so well. And just, I love Sonny's point about this period is an opportunity for us to start sharing for no other reason than to reflect the fact we are a community and we want to come together and help each other. So I love opportunities like this, and hopefully you will gain something from this, and happy to take questions as well. Let's share my screen if I can.
And if you've got any questions already that you're thinking of that you want Martin to tackle, get them into the chat now while I fill some time while he finds his screen share button.
Yeah, it's not allowing me to. Hold on 1 second. Here we go. Can you see my screen now?
No.
You'd have thought with saving me till last. Here we go. How's that?
You struggle. There we go. Coming up.
Great. So some time ago, we talked about the QA function as an underutilized resource for contact centers. Historically, the QA function, especially in a regulatory world, allowed people just to, are we adhering to the areas that we're meant to adhere to, yes or no, and then they would walk past that team and see them again next month, or just focus on the score, and maybe even go externally to find out how services were being received and perceived by their customers, when in fact their own team had a wealth of data about how that was being perceived. We like to think, and we've been talking about this for a while, is the QA team, more so than many other functions, has a massive sphere of influence within your contact center, and should be able to touch upon and influence and help other departments, all of these ones that I'm talking about here, so training and development, marketing, product, legal and compliance, HR, team leaders. And much like the queen on a chessboard, the QA team can navigate maybe and be a conduit to sharing best practice, whereas other teams are a bit more kind of less mobile, as it were. And one of the things that we've seen as a direct impact of the huge changes that contact centers have undergone is, even in contact centers where previously they might not have considered their QA as this kind of font of knowledge, they have been going to QA and saying, what are you hearing? What are you reading? How are our customers responding to the fact that we've had to change our service in whatever industry? And importantly, they're asking QA, how are our teams sounding, or how are they showing up? How do they feel? And it's been great for us to help companies adapt to that, but it's just great to see anyway for the industry, so that this kind of untapped gold mine of information and knowledge about both your employees and your customers, because of this crisis, is people are starting to realize that QA is a great way to get a live update as to how your teams are performing and how your changes to your service are being received. Certainly the feedback we're getting, and it would be good to get people's views on this, is despite longer wait times and maybe limited now options, customers are generally more forgiving. And I think there's a real opportunity for us in the industry to both improve our perception, but also improve customer experience where it really matters. So people have been allowed to be far more human. Maybe being at home has removed some of that kind of formality where formality isn't required. What we're seeing is people are amending their scorecards quicker than they've ever amended them to reflect the fact that they're in a crisis. And what happens, to a point Lee made earlier, suddenly people are prioritizing. So maybe, for example, name exchange, you must give your name 3 times in the call or whatever, isn't as important as a more holistic measure as to how did you make the customer feel? How was that experience? So I think there's some real opportunities for some of the learnings that people are getting to stand the test of time once we're out of this period, through the agility of amending a scorecard, but predominantly recognizing that your QA team can influence all of these different areas. All you need to do is just establish the communication routines between departments in order to be able to say, hey QA, tell us what you know. Over and above, are we compliant this month? Or what is our quality score? How are we being perceived? And what do you recommend we do in order to deliver a better experience? So that's been a real positive. There are still, of course, some companies that are struggling. They might have reduced some of the monitoring. The majority have actually increased it. But whereas before they've been pretty set on either a percentage of their contacts or a number of evaluations per agent per month, what they've realized is they can be far more flexible with the resource they've got and say, you know what we really need to do is focus on our vulnerable customers. So those customers that meet those requirements, we just want to do more monitoring for them to make sure that we're delivering everything that they need to in a period where there's heightened emotions. Conscious that I've just rattled on for a bit there. Are there any?
I think there's been some great stuff coming out into the chat around really human behaviours there, Martin. So it's great to see that people are leaning more towards empathy and the human elements. I think there was one from an example from Nathan Mashoud where their chairman only used to perform QA against agents' pay reviews. So real different thing there. And I think the Alex Pearl is asking, have you seen a more general shift in people's scorecards more towards reporting and empathy rather than other measures?
Yeah, they're really good points, and it leads on to one of the things that we like to kind of break down QA. And we would believe that there's 12 critical success factors. So this would make up the elements of your quality framework. And you can see to the bottom right, focus on soft skills, the human element. That would be something that now, in an updated version, we would call emotional intelligence. But the aspect of the human element has probably taken priority now. And it's okay to be able to score something holistically by saying, did this call feel like a good interaction? Because previously, I think historically QA's shied away from grey areas, somewhere where you can't make a determination one way or another, when in fact, if your QA team is competent and has experience, they are able to, with a fair percentage of certainty, state whether the interaction was a positive one, both for the customer but also for the employee. And that focus on the human element has come to the fore more so than the other areas. Happy to share this as well, by the way.
I think there's one question I had, Martin, and I think it's probably last question before we're able to wrap up. But I think it's a really key one. It's to say, once people are coming back to doing QA in the conventional way, is there a risk that they might revert back to type when people have been so far removed from the conventional way of doing QA? And do we need to have some sort of tolerance there as we phase people back in line with the competence of them potentially in that point of the role?
It's a great question. I think what is it they say? Necessity is the mother of invention, right? So we've all been pushed into a world where we've just had to be inventive, but we've also had to prioritize. And I think once people realize that the world doesn't fall apart if your scorecard hasn't got 48 different line items in it, and you've just prioritized on the important stuff that allows for effective coaching, effective process improvement, and effective kind of employee feedback, whilst also sort of focusing on the customer experience. If you've got those elements in your scorecard, most scorecards they grow organically. People don't necessarily review them, they just add to them. Yeah. Whereas in this period, what's happened is people have gone, okay, from our scorecard, what are the important elements that we need to keep? Just focus on them. And what we're saying is, once you're outside of this period, don't just revert back to, now we're going to add all the other line items in, because did you even really need them in the first place? So it's been fascinating to see, and everything that's been discussed so far, I think, is just about cutting through. We have so much data in the contact center world, don't we? We have so many KPIs. We've all lived in an industry where your comfort breaks are measured in some places. Whereas in fact now what we're doing is there's more trust. We're trusting employees to work from home and still deliver. There's more focus on customers, and there's just more focus on doing the things that make a difference when you're in a crisis are the same things that are applying to, let's quote, normal, because it's never going to be the way it was again. And notwithstanding that it's been tragic, I think we'll come out of this with far more learnings, and we should be better placed as an industry.
Brilliant. I think we could do a whole hour on QA, Martin. It's one of those contentious topics in the contact center. But sadly, we're going to have to call it a day there. I think it's been awesome for the turnout. And what I'd love is for everybody just to very quickly switch on their camera so we can get a big thumbs up for social media purposes for later, and just give us a big wave or your funniest face while we capture a picture. Feel free to do big waves, everybody. Celebrity squares. Here we go. We've got a few there. Brilliant. Okay. But I think we've packed a hell of a lot into there for 60 minutes, and I think for me moving forward, it's to think actually whether or not we expand this to maybe an hour 15, hour and a half, 90 minutes. Be really interested in your thoughts and in your feedback. I am going to be sending a very brief questionnaire out after this. It'll be 2 or 3 questions tops, just in terms of, would you recommend this as a platform for people to attend? How did you find it? And anything you'd like us to do differently, or any topics that you think you'd like covered in some of these sessions moving forward. We're here to stay. I think virtual is here to stay at the same time as well. So great to kind of connect so many people from across the UK up and have such great conversations, because you wouldn't get this regionally. I'd like to thank Mike, Lee and Martin for their contributions. That really, really value-adding topics. And I'd like to thank everybody for joining on and getting stuck in and asking some really great questions there. It was awesome to see the participation from across the group. The next Contact Center Network event is now an Eventbrite. I'll be putting it into the link in the email, so you can join that. It's going to be on the 28th of May, same time. Hopefully being in work and actually joining, being able to work won't mean that you won't be able to attend, but we'll see how it goes. But thanks very much for everybody. I'm going to try and send some of the content out afterwards and share it with you on the emails that you submitted. But thank you very much, and adios.